Hello people, what is going on, and welcome back to another episode of which I've changed the title to from LMS Noob to LMS Veteran. That might change, who knows. It was what I initially called it, and then I changed it to something a little bit more concise. But that was what I was initially branding this series, and again it might change, but I should stick to something. So in this episode I'll just list off a few things that I've improved and a few things that I want to work on, and a few recommendations as to what I think should happen with PvP in the future to help some newbies. So for those who don't know what this series is about, it's pretty self-explanatory, but the idea here is to show you my progression from the complete bottom rungs of an LMS player or even a PvPer, because I've never really dabbled in, at least pay to play well, yeah, it is pay to play PvP. I only ever did free to play PvP because it's a lot simpler. You didn't have to worry about all the switches, and you didn't really have to worry about prayer. And so I wanted to, after watching Oda Block quite a bit, get into it. I wanted to know what it was all about. It really looks interesting, and I see a lot of people saying they don't even play PvP and yet they enjoy watching it. And it's because there's a lot going on. There's a lot more to the game than you initially think when you start out on RuneScape. It's a lot more complex into it, and it becomes a bit like a poker game. You're trying to outsmart your opponent and switch and fakey in time. So what have I improved in this episode? We're only 3 episodes in, and bearing in mind I was training before I started the series, but I was really bad, seriously bad, to the point where it would have probably been unwatchable. So I started it in where I felt like I was getting somewhere in my training. And I think maybe every 5 episodes or so I might just do like a comparison video from the first episode, just so you can actually see real time what the progressions are looking like, because as I'm talking I feel like I can actually control battle a lot more. So the things that I've improved on is my step-ins. I'm definitely getting a little bit more smoother with freezing and walking into the opponent. I'm not quite as good when it comes to tick perfect attacks and moving out and stepping in, especially the corner step-ins. I'm still working on that, but again, one step at a time. What else have we been doing? My gear switching is a lot smoother. Maybe not in this video, I'm not too sure, but as I'm speaking, for example, one of the things that I feel I've definitely improved on is preemptively switching my prayers. So if I think, right, I'm going to go into magic, I'm going to switch to I don't know the names, by the way, except maybe piety and rigor. I forget what the magic one is, but let's just use rigor. Let's say I'm on piety, then I'll switch to rigor prior to switching my melee attack, so that way they don't see the melee attack and I can switch on the last tick and when they're on the wrong prayer. So that thing has definitely been seeing improvements. My magic switching, for example, was getting a lot quicker. And that's pretty much it in that respect. I'm just slowing down. That's what you will realize when you start to progress in the game, and when you start to feel like you got more control over what's happening, you will slow down into the ticks, because a lot of time you just switch as soon as you finish an attack, and then they just telegraph it, right, and then they switch their prayer. But if you can switch on tick, then you have a little bit more opportunity to get some damage in. And again, that comes with slowing down. You realize that every 4 ticks is what, 1.6 seconds or something like this. I forget the actual second timing, but you'll see Oda when he, and I use him as an example because obviously I like to learn from the best. And when you see what he will do, he will hover over his gear switching just before switching. So you'll hover over the gear that he's about to switch, waiting for that right moment, an opportune moment, and again, obviously being ready to defensively pray when he needs to. So that's the side of improvements. The bits I'm struggling with and that I just get run over with is when people obviously know what they're doing and they move a lot, so I find it very hard to click on them. And so if I'm trying to get into freezing them and they're just in and out, back and forth, left and right, I really struggle with trying to catch up with them. And then at the same time, while they're doing that, they're switching every tick, and they're switching every time that they even to the point where they might be switching defensively, so they will switch into their defensive clothes before they switch back into what they're going to attack with, and then they're obviously faking in between that. And that's the bit that I don't really understand how you get good at, right? That's the main struggle I have, and if I feel like I can get that bit, then I can improve everywhere else. In that, how do I defensively switch, right? If they are switching every 4 ticks, if they are switching on tick, right? So they're on range and I'm playing range, and then the last tick they go to mage. You know, I understand that there is an element of, and I'm probably going to answer my own question to a degree here, that there is an element of predicting what would be best for them to do. So if I think, well, if they go to range here, they will catch me, and therefore I will defensively play range at the right moment, because you've got to pray almost on that tick as well, so that they don't get you off guard. And it almost, you know, I get it, it's like a poker game, and you've got to try and predict what they're going to do in the end of the day. But when you watch Oda, he's obviously getting a lot of the prayers right. So if he's facing one of these guys, how is he managing to predict this if you don't know what they're going to actually go to? So I imagine there is an element of gear switching. Gear switching so that your stats have some role to play as opposed to just your prayer. I hope any of this makes sense when I'm trying to articulate it, because it sounds so much more confusing when I'm saying it than it actually is. So yeah, and you'll see that maybe in the last fight here, as I move into the final square, because I do feel like I'm actually coming up against the end battles a lot more often now. I'm able to make my way. I'm able to fight the guys that are below me. Before I would still like be challenged by them, and now I could almost coach them to a degree. But I'm not quite there yet. So what would I recommend going forward before we end this video? I think there needs to be a form of ranking system for the noobs to go against other noobs, for people of the same order to fight each other. And because, you know, with this, it's very, very random. I might come against an Alo level player, and I might come against someone who's just started out, and there is no rhyme or reason. At least it feels like. I don't know if there is an actual ranking system built in, but, you know, I've come against Oda before, and so it just feels, and it could be just a matter, you know, if there's only 24 players that have joined in there, it's there's not much you can do about that. But I feel like if there was a game mode that maybe enabled people to learn, this will come into it for, I think, with community service, and this is where I get wrecked, by the way. But yeah, with community servers, I feel like if people can design a PvP arena of some form where people can learn, or maybe even design a tutorial of how to work on switching and movement and tick based stuff, then it will introduce people into the PvP arena a lot more, and they'll be a little more enticed to learn. You know, if you go into a first-person shooter game, you're likely you first got to do casual games, right? So you have to build your way up there before you can join a ranked game, and even then you'll be ideally match made with other players of your skill level. And yes, occasionally you'll get people who will start a new account and you'll have to fight, and they'll gimp themselves so they get matched with easier players. But for the most part, you're match made with people who are around about your level. So I think in this game, that's mainly what it lacks, is that you're up against people who've been playing the game for a decade, and they are, you know, their tick timing is embedded in their brain, embedded in their fingers, and it's all second nature to them. And, you know, you don't really stand a chance if you're just starting out trying to figure things out, and there's not much of a space to learn. Unless you've got friends that are going to enable you to learn with them, then you're kind of at a loss, and you, like myself, just got to dig deep and work through every minute progression. And I'm feeling it. I'm definitely getting there, but I can imagine a lot of people quitting. And I've got this series that I'm building myself with, so I've got a reason to try and push through. But with that, I'm not going to ramble on anymore. I look forward to showing you the next episode, because there's massive improvements with each one. So I hope you enjoyed. This has been Puck. Peace.